Welcome to Immigration Insider with your host, Attorney John Nicelli. This podcast is an educational forum on how to deal with complex aspects of immigration and pitfalls to avoid. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, johnnicelli.com. Now here's the host of Immigration Insider, Attorney John Nicelli.
Hi, everyone. My name is John Nicelli. I'm an immigration attorney in New York City. I've been practicing immigration law for a little more than 40 years, and I practice exclusively in the field of immigration law. We do absolutely nothing else except immigration. So I have many years of experience dealing with all phases of immigration, from family petitions to sponsorship cases through work, non-immigrant visas, court cases, all kinds of appeals, all kinds of waivers. We have a whole variety of things that we do and we specialize in. And as I said, we're doing this over 40 years and we're quite successful in many of the things that we do. So today I wanted to speak about something that many people probably never heard of and don't know even exists. And that is, it's a special waiver, and it's called an application for advance permission to enter the United States as a non-immigrant. So a non-immigrant is a person coming to the United States temporarily. So for example, if you come as a tourist, you're a non-immigrant. If you come with a temporary work visa, that's a non-immigrant. Agriculture workers, for example, that come to pick crops on farms or on trees and whatever, those are non-immigrants, because it's a person that doesn't have what they call immigrant intent. You have no intent to remain in the United States on a permanent basis. You're coming here only for a specific period of time, or the period of time that the Customs and Border Protection will give you when you arrive at an airport or at a port of entry. So this waiver is actually filed with the Border Patrol, which is now Customs and Border Protection. So the way it works is this. So you have to be a person who's outside the United States, basically. And there are some exceptions. So actually, I'll do the exceptions first. So if you're inside the United States and you've been a victim of a crime, and a qualifying crime, and I'm not going to get into all the details, but there are a list of qualifying crimes, you'd file for a U visa. So when you're eligible to file for a U visa, then you'd have to file this form, which is called an I-192. If you've been a victim of trafficking, so you've been, another way, smuggled into the United States for the purpose of doing some illicit activity, such as working in some sex parlor, or perhaps you had this organized crime brought you into the United States, and they want you to make their little slave. There's been incidences where people have been brought into the United States and brought to here, even in New York, to work in restaurants. So what was happening, in one case in particular that I remember, there was a restaurant here in Chinatown, and they brought in about 30 or 40 people, and they were having them work and live in the restaurant. So they would live in the basement, they'd work all day, 12, 15 hours a day, and they would either get no pay or they'd get like $50 a week or something. It was kind of ridiculous. So, of course, thank God that they've all been arrested. All the people that were involved got arrested, and the persons who were actually trafficked got their visas to become permanent residents because they were the victims of this particular type of abuse. So that's a different situation and a topic for another day, because that's quite involved. But that's just to give you a basic example of what trafficking is considered to be. So the other reasons for filing this particular waiver would be to allow a person to come to the United States when they're not allowed to come here because they're inadmissible for some reason, whether that be criminal grounds or health grounds or some other grounds, which I'm going to get into. So basically, I just want to go over the form, and the form is called an I-192, and it's basically a fairly simple form to fill out. It's everything else that goes with it that's not too easy. So basically, it's going to require your name, your date of birth, your place of birth, your country of birth, country of nationality, your gender, your mailing address, your history of mailing addresses, wherever you lived. They may want to know about your marital history, if you've been married, you were divorced. They want to know if you're living with somebody, do you have a partner? They also want to know about your past travel history, your employment history, and basically anything you're doing in your life, if you're volunteering your time and things like that, or what kind of work you do and what kind of social activities you have. Maybe you're involved with some organizations, charitable organizations, things like that they would be interested in. And of course, any criminal history. Now, first I'm going to go over health grounds. So let's say you're living outside the United States and you cannot get the treatment that you need for a particular disease you may have. For example, tuberculosis. Now, tuberculosis is what you call a communicable disease. And tuberculosis is actually pretty dangerous to have because it can kill you. And it also is very contagious, it can spread to other people. The problem with tuberculosis is that there are many forms of tuberculosis, and not all forms of tuberculosis are as contagious as other forms. So let's say you're from a country in Africa, for example, or in Central America or South America, where the medical treatment available to you is not that good or might not be sufficient to treat you and cure you for whatever ailment you have. So what will happen is that if you're determined to have something like TB, for example, you're not admissible to the United States without having this waiver. So you'd file the waiver, and in that waiver, you'd have to put down 1, what the diagnosis is, 2, the treatment you've received, 3, the medicines that you're taking or have taken or have been prescribed, and why it's necessary for you to enter the United States. And it would be necessary in this case for medical treatment. So it wouldn't be to come as a tourist, it would have to be specifically for medical treatment. And then you'd have to show basically, if you come here, well, who's going to pay for your treatment? So more than likely, they're going to require that you have some kind of health insurance that could pay for the treatment. Generally, in cases like this, they ask for letters from doctors that you may have spoken to or made arrangements with in the United States to come for the treatment, and they want to know where you're going, who's going to treat you, what hospital you're going to, or what facility you're going to, and everything involved basically in your care. And it's very important that you have coverage as to how it's going to be paid, because if you don't have proof of how it's going to be paid, it's going to be very difficult to get the visa to come here. And that visa, once issued, would allow you to come for a specific period of time, not an unlimited period of time, but very specific for your particular treatment. Now, let's say you need ongoing treatment. So you initially get treated, and then you go back to your country, but you still need further treatment. Well, most of the time when they issue these types of waivers, they will give it to you for multiple entries. So I've done cases like this where they've been actually eligible to enter the United States for 5 years. So they can come for unlimited times for specific reasons during a period of 5 years. And then once the 5-year ends, if you never violated the terms of your visa that you were issued, you can refile for another waiver, and basically on the same grounds, if you're still not well enough, and you could be issued for another 5 years. So we've done those numerous times, and you could get them. That's not impossible to get, but you do have to have the background evidence and that supporting evidence, I should say, for whatever your illness is, whatever treatment you have, why it's not available in your country, and why it's extremely necessary for you to go to the United States for your well-being. Now, most of these types of waivers are not filed for those reasons. That's a minimal amount of people that come for health reasons. But there are many, many people who file based on criminal grounds. So that would be people that were here in the United States, committed a crime, and then left. Or perhaps were here in the United States, committed a crime, and were convicted of that crime, and were deported, and which presents another issue altogether. But depending on what the crime is, immigration will want to see what happened. Like I've had cases where people didn't actually commit crimes, but they committed misrepresentations. So I'll give you an example. A person comes to the United States and had been living here in the United States, arrives at the airport, has a valid visa to enter. And when the immigration inspector says, were you ever here before? And they say, no, this is my first entry. Or I was here, but I left timely. And they're lying, obviously, to immigration. So the immigration inspector will check when your departures, find out you're lying, and that'll be the end of that, and they'll deny you entry. So if you've been denied entry for that reason, that would be a reason to be granted a waiver. There are many, many other reasons. Besides the crime would depend on the type of crime you did. If you spent time in jail, immigration, when they review these waivers, they'll want to see, when I say immigration, it's not USCIS, it's the Customs and Border Protection Agency, because this is filed directly with Customs and Border Patrol and Border Protection. It is not filed with the USCIS. That's a totally different agency. So, and the waiting period of these right now, it's probably about 8 or 9 months. It's not really a long time. They used to do them in like 2 months or 3 months. Now it's like 8 or 9, which is the last one they did. So if you have a criminal history of any kind, before they will consider granting you the waiver, they'll want to see what type of crime you committed. Was it the only crime you committed? What's your history of crime in the United States? How serious are the crimes? What are the fines that you received? What's the jail sentence you received? Were anyone injured in the crime that you did? So it depends on many, many, many factors. Suppose you have a DUI, for example, but it's only one DUI, and then you left the United States, or you were deported after that DUI, which happens many times. And now 10 years later, you want to come back. Well, if you can prove you've been rehabilitated, such as going to classes for rehabilitation, DUI classes, or let's say it's a drug offense, so you did drug rehabilitation classes, and they can show that you can demonstrate that you're not on drugs anymore, or you're not an alcoholic anymore, then more than likely there's a good chance you'll get the visa. But you'd also have to show that at the time you're in the United States, how long were you here and what were you doing here? If you worked, did you ever pay taxes here? We have people here 10, 15 years, never paid a penny in tax. They leave, they want to come back. Well, I don't think that's going to happen, because if you never show that you have really followed the rules here and deserve to be here, they're really not going to let you come back if you're just abusing the system. Other times people come in, they've been on welfare, or they've been on food stamps based on fraud. Cases like that, highly unlikely to be granted. But people that have family, maybe have children here, maybe you have parents here, maybe you have a spouse here. For those reasons, they may allow you to come back. Perhaps you've been outside the country for many years. You have a life there. Now you have a job there. You pay taxes outside the country. You do everything you're supposed to do. Well, in those cases, it's more than likely that you would be granted. But again, it depends. It's always a matter of discretion. It always depends on what exactly you did that caused you to be inadmissible to the United States. Like, I had a man once that had been working here illegally, and he had been sponsored to a job, and the case was actually approved. He was a Canadian citizen. So he returned to Canada without getting his residence before, because his wife wanted him to go back to Canada. So they decided that he was going to go back and then basically resettle in Canada and not be in the United States. So he tries to enter the United States at a port of entry, and they asked him, have you been in the United States? He says, yes. Have you worked in the United States? He says, yes. So when they realized that did you have a visa to work in the United States? And he said, no. Well, now you have unlawful presence. So he would be inadmissible for the unlawful presence again. In that particular case, he was actually deported back to Canada, because the Border Patrol agent apparently didn't believe what he was saying, and they actually did deport him back to Canada. Instead of denying him admission, which they could have done, they actually deported him. And then after being deported, he was barred for 5 years. So I filed a waiver for him, and he's actually been granted this waiver probably about 3 or 4 times already. Since 2011, I think we started, and now it's 2024. So all those years have gone by, and every few years we filed, and he gets the visa again. And basically in his case, we showed that, yes, he was deported. Yes, he did work. And yes, he did admit that he had been working illegally. But he had paid his taxes, and he had basically stayed out of trouble, never got arrested or anything like that. He had family and who were related to him, American citizens, and other family members in the United States. And he showed that he was resettled in Canada now, and he's basically not going to be coming to the United States, but only want to come for short term, which is basically what he did and keeps doing. And in those situations, it's a good chance you'll get the visa. So that's basically it as far as these types of waivers are concerned. As I said, most people are unfamiliar with them. They think that once they've been deported or once they've done something to make them inadmissible, whether health reasons or criminal grounds, it's impossible for them to come back. And that's clearly not the case. I had a lady today from Israel who had been deported, and she not only was deported, but when she came she had been living in the United States for about 10 years, had children here, leaves and then comes back with the same visa that she originally had. And they said, "Have you been living here?" She said, "No, I haven't been living here." Meantime, she had kids here. So that was kind of foolish. And immigration checked her whole history, and they realized she had been here. I believe her husband or her father, somebody had filed for her, so there's a whole record of her being in the United States. She lied, obviously, and she was deported. So this lady was not only deported for being here unlawfully, but also because she made a misrepresentation to the Customs Border Protection officer who interviewed her. So she's tried 3 times filing a tourist visa after she's been in Israel now 15 years. And she's tried 3 times during the last 15 years to file for a tourist visa to come back, and they've denied her each time. And they will never, and I told her today, actually, when they called me, that you will never get a visa to come back to the United States because you need the waiver. And if the waiver is not filed, you will never, ever, ever get a tourist visa to return here. So now we're working on her waiver to come back, and she probably will get it. I'm pretty sure we'll be successful. She has strong family ties here and in Israel. So I don't think she has any problem at all. I think she's going to be fine. So those are the things that I wanted to bring to your attention because, as I said, many people are absolutely unaware that they could file for a waiver after they've been deported or did something wrong or have some health issues or whatever. There are ways to come in, but it's not dealing with USCIS. This is filed directly with Customs and Border Protection. They used to grant these waivers right at the border, but now they changed the procedure that you have to file in the jurisdiction where you're living, but then the papers get transferred to Virginia, somewhere in Virginia, to a Customs and Border Protection office there, and they make the actual adjudication process. So another thing I wanted to mention, besides this, I have many, many clients that are very fearful of what's going on, being that we will have a new President Trump again as president and all his promises and threats about deporting people. And my word to everyone is to please stay calm. They're not going to come knocking on your door unless you have a criminal record or an outstanding order of removal. If you've been deported and never left, you're a prime target. If you have a criminal record, you're a prime target. Those are the people that I expect that they will look for and arrest because they're easy targets to find primarily. Even though people move, they do find them. One of the ways people find you is immigration is very, very informed as to how to use social media. They check all the social media sites. They try to track relatives to see if even a relative, a child, say a son or a daughter, mentions their parents having an immigration problem. That would be an open ticket for immigration to come and find them. So I would highly recommend, if you don't want to be found, not to use social media, because that's one of the ways they do find people. They do track them through driver's license and social security numbers. In New York City, we have a state that's uncooperative with the ICE officials. I don't know how long that will continue in the future because policies change, circumstances change, And ICE basically is looking to get rid of people that shouldn't have been here in the first place. All right, that's the people that they're really after: gang members, criminals, all types of criminals. And it's going to take them months, if not years, to actually apprehend people and deport them and process them for deportation. So that takes a lot of time and a lot of money, and it requires a lot of space to detain people. So by the time they get their act together and put it all together, I don't think President Trump will be in office anymore, because it does take a lot of time and a lot of effort. So it may make some headlines initially with people they're arresting, but I can assure you those are people either with criminal records or have a bad history with immigration, such an order of deportation, and they never left. So that's it for today. If any questions, you can always call my office or make an appointment to see me on numbers 212-227-8020. And my email is john@johnnicelli.com. And as I said, 212-227-8020. You can go to my website. You can write a question to us, and we'll always respond, or you make an appointment to see us. Thank you very much, and I wish everyone to have a wonderful holiday.
You've been tuning into Immigration Insider with your host, Attorney John Nicelli. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, johnnicelli.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.